adopt a young boy companion is their first published work. Kathy lives on an acreage in Carvel and is a member of the Stony Plain Rotary Club. She owns a business in Stony Plain. She and her husband Ron, as well as their children, and 2 bunnies, 3 cats, and 3 horses all live together on their acreage. Please help me join me in welcoming Kathy. Thank you.
Mr. President, my fellow Rotarians, for having me here as a speaker. I guess a lot of my old fellow Rotarians from Stony Plain might have known that a few years ago we had gone to Ghana and for the adoption of twins. And we wrote the book Dead Draw, and I brought some pictures here because I know if your club is like our club, they're just interested in the pictures. Now this all came about, and our book starts off with the very first trip. My daughter Mandy went to, she's always had a love for helping underprivileged children for sure. Most kids want to watch Bugs Bunny or Smurfs on Saturday mornings, not her. She'd be watching World Vision and things like that. So she ended up following her life dream and going over to Ghana and doing a volunteer exchange or volunteer trip where she would work on a farm. And it didn't really work out that the farm that she was working in, she was very isolated. So she ended up at this little orphanage. And the little guy that we ended up adopting is in the middle of the picture over there. And the 2 girls are just a couple of girls that were at that orphanage. And there he is. He had arrived at the orphanage, and there it's very non-acceptable for males to be not circumcised because he came from really, really dark mud Africa. He hadn't been. And so while she was there, he had to go get circumcised, and this is him soaking in the towel. There's no antibiotics or anything like that the orphanage would supply. So unless that came from the volunteers, and even the care, like taking him to the hospital and then caring for him afterwards, was all left to the volunteers. So she became very close with him just because of him. He actually arrived at the orphanage just at the same time that she arrived in Ghana. They all do their own laundry, so he had started off telling her that he didn't know how to do laundry. And then she came upon him one day while he was actually doing the laundry. So this is how they do that. This is laundry day for all the youth that were staying in the children's home would do their own laundry. They don't even use washboards or anything. They just use these buckets of water, and it's unbelievable like how clean they can get the clothes. It's just remarkable. Now, when we first went to the orphanage, the first trip that she went there, one of the directors of the orphanages was a past hairdresser. So all the children were dressed very, very nicely. She did all of their hair every day. So this is one of the little girls getting her hair braided. And this is them starting to make an evening meal for the children. So you can see that it's very, very rustic. So not a lot of hygiene. They're not having health inspectors going through these facilities, that's for sure. And they're eating. This is a dish that's called banku. So it would be like a fermented bean, or I can't remember what it was. A fermented, almost like a ricey bean kind of thing. And then what happens is when you eat it in a broth like this, it expands. It continues to expand and bloat your stomach so that you do feel full after you eat it. So they would eat very little of it, but they'd all have like full little tummies from it. So it was very, very much a staple of their diet. This is a little children's home that she went to when she first went there. And they decided, there was a number of volunteers there, and they decided that the organization had booked them on a lot of touristy type trips. But once they got to know the children, they cashed in got the money back for their tourists, and then they went about fixing up the home. So they did paint. The kids were always coming down with malaria, so they put in mosquito netting for the beds and put screens on the windows. So, and then they had all the kids do their handprints and do their measurements, so that if they ever came back there again, we could remeasure them. This is their outdoor facility, so just kind of like, they don't have indoor plumbing or anything like that. Everything is outside. So on the far side are the showers, and then, or on the near side to me are the showers, and the far side are just like the outhouses. So everything they build over there is just with cinder block. It's the same kind of block that we use here in this building. This is their bedding. They normally don't sleep with anything other than the mattresses. Sometimes they'll cover them if they get too dirty. The children are locked into their rooms at night, and whatever number of kids, you'll see the number that are actually at this particular facility. Their bunk beds are 3 high, and I'll just go to the next picture. And there's generally lots of them in the room. So you can see 3 of them in this room. There's probably 3 more that were actually in that same room. They have generally 2 or 3 kids to a bed. So Caleb wasn't, our son that we adopted wasn't there. He actually slept with the girls. So there's a whole story behind that. But then when he was with his twin, when Mandy went on this first trip, they found his twin afterwards when we made the decision to adopt. And then him and his twin would have been into one of these bunk beds. Because they're locked in the rooms, they, of course, lots of kids have to get up and pee during the night stuff, so they end up having to pee right on the mattresses. They get very, very dirty. It's very, not very hygienic there. It's pretty bad sometimes. And then she went about and she took pictures of all the kids, and if they did have siblings, etc., she took them as a group. So these 2 were there. Together, and these 2. These 3 were all siblings. These 5 were all siblings. And then this one was on her own, and this one was on her own. This guy is a handicapped little boy, and Richard, and he's actually doing quite well now. He's up and walking and everything. He wasn't when we were there. There's Caleb, and at the time we didn't know this till actually we were going through the adoption process. This is actually his sister, but they didn't tell us that at all at the beginning of it. And then this is Charity. So I brought copies of the book. If you ever read the book, Charity is one of the children. When she went there, she was left, her and her little brother, and they go and test them for AIDS. So when they went and tested her for AIDS, Caleb went there as well, just to get his test. The 3 of them had been left there around the same time. The doctor, it's a terrible story, the doctor went and poked them, and then these 2 were so sick. Her brother ended up passing away when Mandy was there, and she ended up, it since has passed away as well. But they both tested positive for AIDS, and then when they went to go test Caleb, as soon as they went to prick him, he screamed and he pulled his arm back, and so he dropped the lancet and then got him secured, and then picked up one of 3 lancets that were sitting there and retested him instead of using a clean one. So he could have very easily at that point have used one of the other 2's lancet. It was a very, very troubling time for us, for sure. For sure. And these 2 were brothers. on his own. This little girl, she was what we would consider to be a juvenile. She was left there to have her baby and then was taken away to go serve her time. And her baby would have been abandoned there, and she probably wouldn't have ever gone back. She hadn't gone back by the time that we went there. There he is again. There's Caleb. Mandy was teaching them how to roast marshmallows. She went and got marshmallows and showed them how to do that. There's Mandy, that's my daughter Mandy, with Caleb and one of the other boys there. And these are all the girls that were at that home. And then there's Mandy leaving. That's the end of her first trip. So she left. She comes back and talks us into adopting. And then when we found out that his name at that time was Achu, and Achu means twin number one. And so we said, well, you know, we were thinking of fostering at that time, and then we ended up having a family meeting, and we all agreed that we would. I kind of thought my husband would say no, you know, but he agreed to it, so we decided to adopt the two boys. And according to law there, you actually have to go there for 3 months and live with them for 3 months, and then you can adopt out. So we had a lot of trouble when it came to that, because we didn't want to do anything illegal, and actually just days before we left we got a call from the Alberta government saying that they weren't accepting any children from adoptions to be coming back to Canada just because of child trafficking. So to understand child trafficking, what they mean by that is paying any money other than what the costs are as you're going through government policies, etc., to do the adoption. So when I'm just going to pick on Madonna because I usually do. When Madonna goes in, this is what happened just before we left, is Madonna left and she went to Malawi, dropped down there for 2 weeks, chose her child to adopt, dropped $50,000 and wanted to leave the country. And then they were saying, oh, you know, because she'd already done it once, she was doing it a second time, and they said, no, you can't do that. They stopped the adoption. You can't legally do that. So when we went and we made the decision, we actually sent money ahead to us. We wired money over there, and then whatever money we had there, we did an accounting of it. And I'll talk about how to do your accounting in third world countries. It's a little bit different. So when we landed, this is our house. We were known as the people that lived in the very fast-built house. We paid $900 a year to live here. And they called it a very fast-built house because they thought that we were moving into another house, and that was owned by some French people. And they decided that they were going to be in Ghana at the same time that we were, so we couldn't stay in their house. So they quickly built this house onto the parents' compound, which I'll show you in the picture. Over there on the very left is our well. So that's me and Caleb on our front stoop. This is our well. This is where we got our water from. So we would not drink anything other than if it was in a plastic water sachet, they call them. We would use this water to add some bleach to and wash the floors. Our floors were all cement, so we were pretty fortunate that we had floors. This is our yard. So we lived on their compound, so right next to us would be the goats, and they had their outdoor kitchen. And that's where we hung our laundry to dry when we needed to. And it would take days sometimes to hang because we were there in the rainy season, and it would just pour rain on us all the time. Our skin was never dry. You know how you feel your skin and it's dry? It was constantly wet, like if you were in a sauna. Like it's 50 degrees and yeah, it's really, really hot. It's a jungle. So this is them showing us how to prepare authentic Ghanaian food in their kitchen. We did it, but we did it in our own kitchen. And this is the compound. This is where they lived. Now, they would never live in the house that we lived in because we were whites, and they would now just rent it to whites or people that are in a different country. They themselves, because we had running water, we had an indoor toilet and a shower, all of their stuff would have been outside like the orphanage. They would never now live in those facilities because white people have lived in them. So they live in these facilities. There's no toilets or anything. They have to go behind our place into the bush to get to their bathrooms and showers. So really all of it that's in theirs is just an empty room. They'll have sleeping quarters and a place to store their clothes and personal belongings. This is the first night that we got. So once we landed on the plane, we actually got custody of both the boys, and we brought them with us. Silas was the one standing, and he was really, really quiet. We didn't realize at the time. They went and found him in really mud-hut Africa. We went and looked at his village. They'd never seen white people before. We were the first white people he'd ever seen. And in Ghana, probably lots of places in Africa, either the children are fascinated by your white skin. Before I went to Ghana, I never liked to be touched. I didn't like people touching me. And so when we go there, we're walking down the street, it was nothing for 10, 20 kids to come running around you and sing songs and be touching you and petting you like you're, yeah, it was incredible. And when we started traveling with these guys, it would be nothing for us to get off of a trotro or a bus and be surrounded within minutes. We were like celebrities. Within minutes, there'd be hundreds of people around us. We couldn't even move. We had to be rescued a few times. So the other way that they will react is if they're not fascinated by your skin, they don't understand and they're scared, and they think that you're maybe something evil or a ghost or something. And Caleb was the first one. He couldn't get enough cuddles and attention and affection. Silas was the opposite. He didn't want anybody to touch him. He was scared of us. He didn't understand why he had to live with white people. He wouldn't learn English. He wouldn't talk to us. He screamed and cried for hours and hours every day. So when we got back, we ended up putting them into school. And as things progressed, we found out we thought they were 4. They weren't. They were 6. We found out when we were asking, we need to know all the family. Nope, that's the only family. And then we find out that actually one of the kids at the children's home is their sister. So as we're finding out more and more information as we go along, what Silas really wanted was to go back to the children's home to be with his sister. And that's where he just felt comfortable. So we put them back to school, and that's the only time that he would be happy. When we went and picked him up and brought him to our place, he would just be crying, and he'd be crying up all night. People were bringing canes to us, giving us canes, telling us to start caning him and beating him. He would stop crying. But there isn't anything that, you're not going to beat him, cane him. There wasn't anything that we could do to get him to stop crying. He just did not want to be with us. Our Rotary Club actually funded this garden for them. So Mandy had presented at Rotary before we went, and then they funded this garden so that we could help make the children's home sustainable. It's a kind of a tragic story because we planted everything. They have to plant everything in mounds because when it rains, it's a torrential downpour. Like you can't even be out in the rain when it rains there. So they put it on mounds so those seeds don't wash away. And it grows incredibly fast. It was full of beans and radishes, and even though we used our own radish seeds, the radishes grew like huge. They were just massive. The first time the garden grew, we didn't have a fence, and the goats came. They let goats come and eat it. So then they said, we need a fence. You guys need to build us a fence. So we built them a fence, and then they didn't let the children eat it. Like we came back, we went away, we came back, and it was all rotted. So then they just wouldn't use the garden. They said they didn't like that we were using seeds in their garden. So I don't know what they wanted us to do. Grow a garden without seeds. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. This is me with little Senna. She was abandoned when I was there, and I really took a liking to her. So the first when I would go to the children's home, that's I'd go to and play with Senna and the kids. we had a celebration, and this is where you do the ripples of effect when you go into any other, I mean, every day people that we see, but certainly we created a huge ripple of effect here. We went there and we wanted to feed all the kids at the orphanage one day, so we chose Canada Day to do it. We thought if we could get them hot dogs and buns, and we made them yam fries and gave them cookies for dessert. We went and got them sodas and things like that, and have the celebration, and we could feed the kids, and we got 2 hot dogs for every kid, and this is lots and lots of food for them. And they said, this is us with the kids getting ready to eat. And they brought in entertainment. But you'll see at the back, in the background, they have a fence, and all the villagers started coming. And then when the food was ready, they gave portions, very, very small portions to the kids, sometimes just like half a hot dog, and then started giving the food in abundance to everybody that was there. Because we didn't realize, at that time, we thought that children's homes were the same thing that we would have here, something that you do out of the goodness of your heart. It's a social service. There, it's a business. What we did there was something to entertain the children and teach them about Canada. They switched over and they changed it into a marketing thing. And at the time, we didn't realize until afterwards what was going on. They were looking to solicit more children to be abandoned. They were showing them that we have newly painted buildings. We have whites that are coming there to help pay for your children's education. We have an abundance of food, more than enough for the kids to eat. We can feed other people. And actually that did happen. When we were there, we started seeing an influx of more and more kids being abandoned to their home. And that's when we just kind of ran into somebody, and somebody telling us that lived there was telling us that they were sending out flyers and things like that, saying that this is what we were doing, is we were looking for more kids to be growing their school or their children's home. So we didn't know that that was going on, but definitely is something that goes on there. These are all the children that are in the home. Only 2 of these are real orphans. So they do use the word orphanage there. We try to avoid it. Sometimes I just do because people understand an orphanage over a children's home. So yeah, once we started realizing that, and then we started actually observing their families coming to visit them, you know, and then asking which whites would be interested in them and their education and things like that. While we were there, we had to do all of our own legwork. Some of you guys that had conversations on the side, and I was telling you, when we go over there, it's not a part of the Hague Convention. You have to do the whole adoption by yourself. It was a big thing that Obama was going to be there the same time that we were. So everybody was focused on Obama. When we wanted to go do something, if there was some news thing on about Obama or anything, you just wait. You can't get an appointment to go see a government official. You just show up. And, and once you show up, as long as there's nothing on TV about Obama, you probably got in right away. Pink chickens is another thing that was really unique for us. Any of you guys that have been to Mexico, you see chickens running loose all over the place. They were running loose all over the place. They dye their chickens pink. They tell us it's because the hawks won't eat them then. I don't know, there were an abundant amount of pink chicken, so maybe that's why they do it. I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if we should have been eating the chicken. When we started having a lot of trouble with CLIS, we thought one of the things we were doing research on some of the attachment disorders and things like that. And one of the things that we thought, and my daughter and I will disagree. She can have a speech and she'll say this isn't true, and I'll have the speech and I'll say it is true. I think all along, because they had told us so many lies, they knew where CLIS was even before. They had told us when we first said that we wanted to adopt Caleb, that his twin was dead. And then they said, no, he was just missing. And then there was all these different stories. So in the end, I think all along, they were causing us trouble on communicating to him, and they wanted to keep him. Because if we took Caleb, they ended up extorting us, trying to extort us for $30,000. And that ends up being our third trip there. I didn't go, my daughter did. But when that started happening, we didn't know that that was going to happen, of course, as we're going through this process. But I think in hindsight that they thought they could get a one-shot deal from Caleb, and if they kept Silas, that would be an ongoing market thing. Because when we ended up taking him back to see if that would be okay and how Caleb would feel if he was separated from Silas, they stopped feeding him, and they said they ran out of food in the orphanage, and there's always excuses. And they thought, oh, he could be sick, we need too much money for medicine, and it was like one story after another, almost every other day. So before we had taken him back, we thought that we should give him one last trip and see if we got him away from the directors of the children's home, if he would settle down and try to bond with us. So we ended up going to northern Ghana, and they have an elephant park. I won't even tell you the hell we went through to get to this place. But it was kind of neat. It was in the wild. There's elephants and all kinds of wild animals. And it's kind of weird because I was watching my daughter Mandy, and she's 24 at the time. She's going there to take a picture, and she's walking right up to this elephant. And I'm just like, that's an elephant. It's really big. I don't know that you should be getting that close. And I think the only thing that I can understand how she wasn't afraid is we see zoos. We take our kids to zoos. And so we can get fairly close, but there's always that protection barrier. So even though that protection barrier wasn't there, she felt comfortable getting in sight close to the elephant. Anyways, she's lucky she didn't get charged because they were wanting to cross. We were in their path. And there's a whole herd of them. I mean, be out there every day and get to see them. So. They're amazing. And this is them. We're taking them onto a walkway. Hit the next one. So this walkway was actually built by Canadians, and it's a canopy walkway, so you can be over top of the jungle. There's an incredible amount of spiders and snakes there. So this would be nice and comfortable to go through there because there was no spiders and snakes on these walks. But again, we thought that we would take Silas to something like this and kind of distract him. He was having none of it. He screamed all the way through the canopy walkway. So we didn't see any wildlife when we were on camp, and neither did anybody else that was visiting with us that time. I ended up staying at this place. This is owned by some people from the States. They create their living arrangements or the hotel kind of thing into a mud hut looking environment, but it was amazing food and things like that they served there. We didn't always eat very well because we ate pretty authentic when we were there, but we'll never forget that this was like a good solid meal that we had when we were here. And this is adoption day. So when we made the decision, we actually kept custody of Silas and put him back into the home, and then went through the adoption with Caleb. And when we made that decision, it was thinking that every year we would be going back to Ghana, and we would be able to go pick up. And one of the trips we would be able to bring Silas back with us. Unfortunately for us, when we got back, we could come back, just so you understand, we can come back, but it could take up to a year after the adoption before Caleb would get his Canadian papers. So we hired a nanny/school teacher that would live in our house and take care of him. So she was living with us for a month before we left so that she would understand how we wanted his food prepared, and we'd sent over school supplies and things like that so that she would know what to teach him. We had left in September, and then by early November, we were starting to worry because she had left our house and went to Accra. And Accra, including the slums, and she had taken Caleb to the slums. There's like 2 million people. We would have never found them. But she wanted the money. And it was really easy for me because if you have an accent, like Ray knows, I'm always asking him to repeat. I don't understand accents very well. I always have to get people to repeat. So when the calls would start coming in to us, I would take those calls because I would generally not understand, and Mandy would listen on the other phone. And they were asking for $30,000. Now when we were there, they had just changed the money. $30,000 in CDs was worth $30. So that's a reasonable amount. But they were moving to the new money, which would be quite equivalent to ours. It fluctuates like ours with the US dollar. But, so when they started calling for $30,000, I was just like, yeah, $30,000, that's reasonable. There's expenses we didn't understand that are coming up, you know, cell phones, we have to send to the doctors, things like that. We'll send the money. And so we did send the money, but not that much money. We just sent, I think it was like $50 or something, to our contact that we had in Ghana, and told her she needed to meet him. In the meantime, we now know what's going on. We have to go to Ghana. So Mandy and we own a business together. We headed down to the Ghanaian consulate and asked if we could go to Ghana. And the consulate person there said that he wouldn't give me a visa to go back because I had adopted him. And if I didn't get his Canadian papers, I would come back to Canada. And so he gave Mandy permission to. And in hindsight, a million times, I would never have let her go if I thought her life was going to be in danger. So she takes off. I'm meanwhile working with a nanny to meet up with our friends for the money. She finally meets up with them. So now she has a nanny in Caleb, and then they keep them overnight, and then they drive into the city. In the meantime, we've got Mandy landing at the airport. It all has to be timed perfectly because we know that they're watching for us at the airport. We get to the airport, and she's taken right away and put into a house to hide. We didn't know then that we needed to be that cautious, but we were just trying to be cautious because they still had all of our paperwork, etc. So they ended up going back to where our people were staying. And then we thought the nanny was still good. I kept saying she was still good. She wasn't. She went and left and got them and showed them where they were at. They broke in. They threatened them. They told us to go to the police. She's freaking out. I'm freaking out. I go to say, where do you want to go? Like, should we go to the police? Should we not go to the police? I start calling Rona Ambrose's office and asking them what we should do. And they get me in touch with another office in Canada, and they say, no, you should go to the police. And I'm just like, oh, they're so corrupt over there. I don't know. So I get off the phone, I'm about to call Mandy. I get a call back. And it's an anonymous call, and they said, there's a warrant out for your daughter's arrest. If they get her, you'll never see Caleb again. And that's when we said, oh my God. We called Mandy back. I said, don't move. You guys got to get out of there. I'm trying to find helicopters, whatever I can to go get them and get them safely out of there. We end up devising a way to get them safely to the Canadian consulate there. The Canadian consulate won't help them. They'll help Mandy get out of the country because she's Canadian. They won't help Caleb get out of the country. You know, I was just a new Rotarian. I didn't really understand Rotary. God, I wish I would have known. We could have had so many safe houses there. We ended up putting them into a safe house where they were hidden. One day, I call and ask her if we should just change her flights. I used to call her every day, sometimes 2 times a day, and we planned flights home just to give her some hope. And she started screaming. Her passport had been tampered. She had been given a 60-day visa. Somewhere along the line, that 60 had changed to a 30. Somebody wrote over top of the 60 and 30. So now we've got to get her out of the country because there's a warrant out for her arrest because they'll check her passport as she leaves. So we have to leave Caleb behind. And it was a really hard decision for us because we thought we may never ever see him again. We're leaving him in a safe house with people we don't know. How do we know? They don't know who's looking for them. We're hoping we can trust people that they're going to get him to the consulate, get us the paperwork, get it to Canada. And it all works out. Nanny was home for 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, we get the call. Caleb's been living in this basement by himself for 2 weeks. I mean, they feed him, but they have to do regular activities so that nobody knows that something is different in their household. And he gets to fly to Canada. And he gets off the plane, and I was in Canada at the time, crazy. So my husband and Mandy went down to go get him in Calgary. And this is the first time my husband sees Caleb. He's worried, of course, because he's in the airport. It's taking a really long time to get him out. And finally, this woman comes and he says her hair looks like all messed, like she's done like a 24-hour shift. And she says, "Is anybody waiting for a little boy that's colored?" They go, "Yes, we are." Oh my God, he is out of control. He's karate chopping everybody. So he just takes everything in stride. He was on the plane, he doesn't understand the airplane, he thought it was a room. He kept asking for ice cream because they told him, "Press this button if you need anything," and he loved ice cream. He kept pressing it and asking for ice cream. They're trying to tell him, "You don't have ice cream." So he just kept pressing the button, "Get us ice cream." Anyways, I could talk and talk all the time. We have a home here. One of the things that we do try to get people to do is learn from our experiences when we went there. We sent that money over. We would say, if something costs, like we went to go get his passport, $40, they would charge us, it was $50, sorry. They tried to charge us $400 for their passport. It's what they call dashing. Now, anybody that says that they don't dash, they do dash. It'd be the same as saying when you go to a restaurant, a nice restaurant, that you're not going to tip. You do tip. It's part of their culture. What we try to get people to do, just like we did, is if you're going to donate to organizations or projects, is to ask what that dashing amount is. Let them know that you recognize that it's happening. But until we understand, I have a big suspect that I know what we were having to pay. We pay more than $50 for our own passports. You have to pay for those services. So are they not paying their staff enough for services that they feel they have to dash? I don't know, but if the accounting started to show those line items, it would be at least lend us a conversation to analyze what's going on with the money that's being donated there. Can you stop donating? No. Our Rotary Club donates to Malawi's Girls' School. Do you guys do the same? Absolutely. Those kids need hope. They need a place that's safe for them to be at. But we should be asking for accountability for the money that's actually going there. So I don't know if that's my time. I can just talk all the time, so I don't know. Are we good? Any questions? Does anyone ask any questions?
I have a question.
Okay. I have books if you want to have a book. Let me just let you know.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, Kathy, thank you for coming out to speak with us today. I love making a donation every year on behalf of our guest speaker to end polio, so thank you for coming to speak.